Okay, Mark Dover can't figure out a way to log in. Can I send him my email?
No, I called him this morning and
Remind him out?
Mute.
So,
I'll call him. Mr. Turner, when he gets back.
Mr. McDaniel, you're muted.
Well, am I unmuted now? Can you hear me?
Sir. Yes, you're good to go.
Well, thank you all for joining us for the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board video conference meeting for March the 25th, 2021. We have a few announcements to make regarding the video conference meeting. First, if the video conference is disconnected at any time during the meeting shall be stopped and reconvened once the audio-video connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 15 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be continued at 11:30 a.m. on March 25, 2021 via video conference. Secondly, the agenda and documents are located on okc.gov. Thirdly, to speak on a certain agenda item, please call or text your request in advance of the meeting to 405-205-4195. Include your name, the agenda item number, and the reason you would like to speak. Please submit your request prior to the beginning of the meeting to avoid receiving your request after your item has been considered. City staff will attempt to submit requests received during the meeting to process them to the meeting chair. To speak under comments by board staff and citizens, please call or text 405-205-4195. Please list your name, address, phone number, and the subject on which you wish to address the board. Now, I will ask staff, do we have a quorum present for the meeting?
Yes, you do. You can begin.
We have a quorum present, so item one, we'll call the meeting to order. I want to start with just briefly saying that Zane is not with us today because of the passing of his mother in Arkansas, and so he'll be in our thoughts today. He will not be able to join us. Item two, you have been provided with copies of the minutes of our previous meeting on February the 25th. Are there additions or corrections to the minutes? Shall we approve them? It's been moved by Cecilia Robinson Woods that we approve them, seconded by Dee Morales. Those who can vote do so electronically, and for those who cannot do that, please call the roll.
Mr. McDaniel, we need your vote.
Yes. Sorry I was slow. It has passed. The minutes are approved. That takes us to item 3 on the agenda. And let's take first item A. David?
Item A is the MAPS 3 Revenue and Expenditure Report for the period ending February 28th, 2021. On the revenue for the month, $104,615. Fiscal year of $1,034,141. And total revenue of $835,926,084. On the expenditure side for the month, $4,330,079. Fiscal year of $50,226,624, and total $729,207,868. You also have the budget and obligations report for the period ending March 11th, 2021. And if you have any questions on any of this, I'll try to answer those questions.
Questions for David?
Tom, I had just a quick question. We have this sales tax, 19,000 some odd. Is that just a timing thing, just now being reported, or are we literally having some sales tax dribble in?
Yeah, sometimes there's reallocations, and they can be several years back where somebody reported, so they have different tax structures or the way they report it, and maybe it was reported wrong, and once it gets audited or checked, and it comes back to us eventually. And sometimes it goes the other way.
I assume that was the case. I'm just curious what the circumstances were.
Bob, but the state is out auditing companies all the time, having been in charge of one of those company audits, and they always seem to find some money that a company owes, and it goes back in time for 2 or 3 years, and it gets reallocated to all the. So I think that's probably where it comes from.
Well, even if it's a dribble, it's always nice to see more money coming in.
Agreed. Shall we receive the reports? Been moved by Michael Adams that we receive the reports, seconded by Cecilia Robinson Woods. Please vote. The item passed. That brings us then to item B under Roman numeral 3. David?
Item B is a presentation on potential trail projects. So if you recall, we were very fortunate that we had excess money left over from the 3 trails that we built. So we're looking at doing some additional work, and we've been talking with the subcommittee for some time, kind of landed on these projects that you're about to see, with still a little bit of discussion, but I wanted to bring it to the advisory board so that you didn't see it all cold whenever we brought it for a vote. So Jason Cotton is helping us out today with the presentation on how we got to where we are. So I'd like to turn it over to Jason.
Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, David. It's great to see everybody this morning. Give me just 1 second here while I pull my screen up. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen this morning okay? Yes, thumbs up?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. As David said, this is a conversation that has been going on for a little bit. We actually, I looked back this morning, we really kind of started this conversation in January of last year. And so obviously a lot of things have happened since January. And really the conversation is really kind of centered around really what's remaining of the Trails program. There's about $3.8 million as of today that's remaining to be spent. And so we're trying to find some worthwhile projects to spend those dollars on. I think it maybe is a little bit misleading to say this has been going on since January. Not only has COVID been going on, as many of you know, we've also been in the process of trying to get a realignment done on the West River Trail. And so there was some of that project that we needed to let the dust settle on a little bit. And so over the last several months, that's happened. And obviously, we've started to get a clearer picture of some things that we might be able to do with these dollars. And so the presentation that we have brought with us this morning is really just kind of the latest episode in this conversation. And so I'm going to just take you through this. And as David said, the intent is really just to give you some context. So just a look back really real quick. Essentially, we've completed 4 phases of work, or we will have completed 4 phases of work with what has currently been budgeted and obligated. You can see the first 3 phases, and likely the board is already really familiar with those: the West River Trail, the Will Rogers Trail, phase 2, and then of course the improvements out of Lake Draper. I think on your budget and obligations report, what I'm referring to as phase 4 is actually listed as the West River Trail realignment. And so we've just, I think for consistency's sake, we've just indicated that as a fourth phase of work. The budget and obligation numbers that you see here on the slide this morning, I looked at them earlier this week. I believe that they align with your budget and obligations report this morning, and so you can see where we're at in terms of the dollars that we have left. You can also see the mileage that we've done on each one of the projects. And so really in summary, those first four phases of work, almost 30 miles of trail improvements that we've been able to accomplish as part of the MAPS 3 program. You can see we've the summary budget and obligated dollars there, projected changes that are anticipated. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the $3.8 million that's remaining to be spent. And so that's kind of what has brought us here this morning. So I'm just doing some simple math here on what we've been able to accomplish, how many dollars a mile basically I've been able to do this work for. And so you can see there we've basically been executing these trail projects for about $1.2 million a mile. And so if you take the remaining budget that I have listed there and simply divide that out, you can see that we could potentially do, maybe as much as 3.1 miles of work just based on prior performance on this project. And so to pick up really the conversation that we, I guess to pick it up where we stopped it with the trail subcommittee last month, we had really brought forward to them 4 projects that we thought deserved some consideration. And so we provided a summary map here. The map that you see beneath this is actually from Bike Walk OKC, but you can see we essentially proposed 4 projects. There were 2 connections up at the Katy Trail, one at Northeast 10th and one at Northeast 23rd. And there's currently no connections up there to that trail. And so we talked to the subcommittee last month a little bit about those. We talked to them about a 1.3 mile segment of trail along Air Depot Boulevard between Southeast 59th Street and essentially about I-240. So the goal of that would be to connect what will be a bike lane on Southeast 59th Street to the trail improvements that we've made out of Lake Draper. And then lastly, we talked to them a little bit about a trail along South May. And so this would be essentially between Southwest 119th and Southwest 134th. Those of you that are familiar with that area of town will know that Early Wine Park, the Early Wine YMCA, and all the things that are there in that area really are on the north end of that trail, on the northwest corner of the intersection. And so the trail project that we discussed with the subcommittee last month would essentially extend south from there along South May Avenue. And so a lot of the conversations that we had last month with the trail subcommittee really centered around connections around the Oklahoma River. And so I've brought with us a summary map this morning, and we reviewed this with the subcommittee yesterday. The subcommittee really came back and I guess acknowledged the fact that there's some really important connections that could potentially be made in this area. And so you can see we have a lot of existing trails that kind of all terminate in this area. You can see the river trail that basically stops at I-35 today and picks up on the other side of Eastern Avenue, the Katy Trail that's to the north in the slide, and then of course the Grand Boulevard Trail that's on the right side of the slide. And so based on the feedback from the subcommittee, we spent some time with the Oklahoma City Parks Department in the past month. And so the Parks Department explained to us a project that's currently in process, and it's called the Greenway Trail. And essentially, it's going to establish a lot of these connections between the trails that I just mentioned. And so in discussions with the Oklahoma City Parks Department, it's become apparent that the project, actually, this Greenway Trail project was recently bid. The bids came in over budget, and so it's in the process of being redesigned right now. But what also became apparent through our conversations with them is the fact that there was some need for some additional funding, even besides even in light of the fact that part of it was being redesigned. And so we really focused in on a couple of specific portions of the trail that you see here. And so we've divided this into 3 segments to try to explain this a little bit. And so segment A is currently being redesigned, as I said. There are 2 other segments that would essentially connect the river trail, which is existing, to the Grand Boulevard Trail. And so I've identified those as segment B1 and B2 on the slide that you see here. And so in our discussions with Parks, what's become apparent is that segment B2 that you see is essentially completely funded. There's, I'm going to flip to the next slide. Segment B2 is essentially fully funded. And so there's a series of, there's various funding sources for B2. You can see the 2017 general obligation bond, there's a TAP grant and an ACOG grant for about another $600,000. So that segment B2 is completely funded as of today. Segment B1, the city actually has a grant in place for, but the matching funds are necessary. And so in our discussions with the Oklahoma City Parks Department, we discussed the possibility of MAPS 3 funds potentially being used to provide the match for what is called segment B1 on here. And so the idea would be if in fact, this comes forward as a subcommittee recommendation and a board recommendation to council, that essentially those funds could be, those MAPS 3 funds could be provided to the project and would provide the matching funds so that both segment B1 and B2 could be bid together as one larger project. The end result being, our ability to essentially make a connection between what will be the Greenway Trail there on the north, shown as segment A, to the Grand Boulevard Trail on the right side of that image there. The project, as we understand it, would be administered by the Oklahoma City Parks Department and Oklahoma City Public Works. The MAPS 3 role in this would essentially be to provide, as I said, to provide the matching funds. And so as we continue to talk about this and think about this a little bit, we've already looked at this slide this morning. These were our previous recommendations. Obviously, we only have so many dollars to spend, and so we proposed to the subcommittee yesterday that potentially the two connections at the Katy Trail may need to go away to enable us to provide this much needed assistance to the Greenway Trail. And so this is essentially how we left the conversation yesterday. As David said, there was a little bit of conversation after the presentation about which of these projects might be the most appropriate. And I believe that the way that we left it with the subcommittee yesterday was essentially to bring each one of these projects back and allow them to vote on them individually. So you can see the recommendations as they sit today. Again, $3.8 million remaining, about 2.9 million or 2.9 miles of recommendations that we brought forward. At the $1.2 million mile, you can see we've got essentially a project budget of about 3.4 million, which would leave us a little bit of money for contingency and those sorts of things, which is a good thing, given that we're so early on in all of these projects. So with that, I think that brings my presentation to a close. So I'd be pleased to answer any questions that the board might have for us this morning.
Jason, I have one question. Thank you for the presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I understanding that the Greenway Trail that is currently being worked on by the Parks Department will happen regardless of the fact that it's over budget in its first round of estimation?
Yes, ma'am. That's my understanding. As I said, they're in the process of redesigning it currently. And so the MAPS 3 funding that we discussed here with you this morning would not be involved in that project. That will move forward regardless of what decision the subcommittee and the board would make in terms of the smaller components of it.
Right.
Jason, I'd like to add that where our involvement comes from the subcommittee's desire to get across the river and was wanting us for some time now to try and make a connection that just wasn't possible. But this connection that we're seeing now really helps realize that vision and that ability to connect that. And when we heard that they'd come up short, we thought this was a great opportunity to leverage $600,000 to get another $600,000 from another source outside of the city and make all this happen. So that's why we're in that area.
Makes perfect sense.
David, remind me, are there trail projects included in MAPS 4?
There are. They're undefined right now, but there are a few. Not as many as was in A Better Streets, Safer City.
So, which was the bond issue?
Well, it was the MAPS extension, the tax extension piece.
Yeah.
And the bond issue, yeah.
Yeah. So
I want to point out one other thing is the subcommittee had real problems, so to speak, with the South May Trail and wanted us to scrap the South May Trail and go back and do those Katy connections. I'd like to get the board's feelings on this. I'm saying this because Zane's not here, and I know he would bring this up. We haven't done very much in South Oklahoma City. We've done very little we've done nothing in Southwest Oklahoma City. We built the two trails in Northwest Oklahoma City, and then there's already a substantial system built north, and there's very little built south. And this does respond to the trails master plan. It is a piece of that. We didn't just pick this. You know, we were asked to try and follow that along, so that's what we're doing. So I'd like to get everybody's feelings on that.
David, this is Mike Adams. I obviously am interested in trails in Southwest Oklahoma City, and I'm trying to remember. It seems to me like when we first started talking about trails, there was a trail plan. Basically, one of the 4 trails was going to be in Southwest Oklahoma City, and we've now spent almost all of the $40 million, and none of it has gone to Southwest Oklahoma City. I can't speak in particular to the segment you're talking about there, but I think if you look at the trails system in Oklahoma City, it's on. I don't know if you've got a copy of the map or can show the map, but we really haven't spent any money in Southwest, and I think there's an opportunity to do some stuff. I mean, there's an old Grand Boulevard trail that could be connected to the river. That hasn't happened. Ideally, you know, sometime we work a trail down toward Earlywine Park or something, but it just, on a basis of equity, it just doesn't seem like we've gotten any attention in Southwest Oklahoma City. And all of the $4 million go toward that area to define, you know, some sort of a trail system. Now, I'm probably one of the biggest users of the trail system. I walk every day and bike regularly, and I've walked or biked every inch of all of these trails multiple times. And it's just disappointing that every time I want to do something, I have to get in the car and drive halfway across the city to do it. So, again, I don't have a pet project in the Southwest side, but I would like to see the money go into that area of the city.
Yeah, we originally had what was called the Airport Trail, and that was taken out of the Trails Master Plan and moved. So there's just really nothing south of 36th Street.
Yeah, Tom, could I
Yes.
share a thought? I just, and unlike Mike, I'm not one that particularly uses the trails. I'm not a biker anymore, and usually walk in neighborhoods rather than getting out on the trails if I'm even walking. I confess, but the visceral reaction I had when I saw the map that Jason put up and then the changes being discussed. Obviously, the river and the northwest quadrant of the city have been the primary focus of the new trails that we have done, and which is fine with me. A lot of that's just geography. But I did have the visceral reaction that we were taking something away, perhaps just small connectors that can be very useful in Northeast Oklahoma City, in favor of doing something more on the river, perhaps more on the south side of the city. And I know the south side needs some attention as well, but again, that was just a visceral reaction, and I'm not familiar with the Katy trails over in the Northeast 10th, Northeast 23rd areas to, you know, what kind of connectors we're talking about. But again, that was just a visceral, you know, a 10,000 foot view of looking at where the trails were being proposed to move. And it seemed like the northeast part of the city was losing out again to some other part of the city.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention real quickly that on the trail on the southeast side over there, there is some bike lane work that potentially will be extending that trail even further. So it's going to be interesting to see the decision on this, because the bike lane work that we're looking at really won't make any sense without that trail extension. So it's something else to think about.
All of the trails we've done have been connectors. You know, the West River Trail connected the River Trail to Lake Overholser and Lake Hefner. The Will Rogers Trail connected Hefner Trail to the river again, and so we got a good loop there. And we can keep doing connectors, but in Southwest Oklahoma City, there's nothing to connect to. At some point, we have to start building a trail system down there, and it's been underfunded and neglected in the past. And I don't know how we continue to ignore it, how we're ever going to get caught up. So I'm voting against the proposal as it's presented today.
Well, I appreciate the comments. That gives us some guidance. We'll be bringing back actual items to vote on next month, and we can get moving on this. Okay.
Anyone else?
I hope you'll share my thoughts.
I just had one last question, if I may. David, do we know if the Parks Department has other trail plans scheduled beyond what we're seeing here, so that maybe some of Mr. Adams' concerns are being addressed?
I'm going to say yes, they do, but I don't know what those are. They've got stuff, as we said, in Better Streets and the bond issue, but I apologize. I'm really not up to speed on that.
That's okay. I understand. There's a lot of the city you can't know everything about. That's for sure.
I'll try to bring that information back next month when we get further in depth in this and have it up for a vote.
Thank you, David. That's appreciated.
All right. Anything else? All right, then let's move to item C. David?
Item C is another presentation. We had great ribbon cutting. The convention center is operating now as it should, but we've got still work going on Mick Cornett Drive, which was formerly 4th Street, and Kevin Cook is here to give us an update. If you haven't been able to get down there and see it, I want to show everybody what's going on, so I'd like to turn it over to Kevin.
Kevin?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen as well. Give me half a second here. Okay, is that okay for everybody?
Yes.
All right. Well, as David just mentioned, yes, we had the ribbon cutting 2 weeks ago. It was a great event, and I thank all of you for your participation, whether you were there or any participation prior to this, which got us to this point. And so we're really excited the building is open and doing well already, which is great to know in the current state of things. But this is an update on the canopies along Mick Cornett Drive, which was the newly dedicated street, previously 4th Street. And so I'm sure you've probably seen pictures or at least driven by and seen the canopy systems that are out there. So I'm going to just kind of give you a little background history and how we got to where we are today. Back in January is when the actual erection of these began. Prior to that, the subcommittee and advisory board and city council had approved previous change orders to put the foundations in for these. So that was done in the fall. The concrete pier foundations were drilled and installed prior to all of the pavers and other finished materials being installed along this street. And then you can see here that the canopies then came out in pieces. And so the first items that were hung and erected were the trunks of the canopies, and they started on the east end of the road and worked west towards Robinson Street. So what you're seeing here in January was the first canopy trunk going in place. As you can see, there were utilities and other tie-ins, power, and drainage specifically already coordinated in those locations at the base of the foundations or of the canopies. The next thing that they did once they got one trunk in is they started to put what we called the steel tube branches. These are sand-filled tubes that were installed and added to the top of the trunk, which will then hold, as you can see at the bottom of the picture, the canopy itself, the hexagon-shaped canopy itself, gets mounted to each of these branches. And then as you progress down a day or so later, they got the second canopy trunk installed and we're starting to put the branches on. And at the same time, they actually brought the hexagon canopy out in two pieces, set those up, and then welded and connected those on site on the ground prior to lifting them up onto the trunks and the branches. It took them a little while to get the first one or two going, and then after they kind of got a system down, they were able to move quicker and do more as it went. So here's the first one, the first canopy actually erected on top. It took them a couple days. I think this is day 3, and you can see the second canopy in the distance being put together on the ground. And then here we are about a week later, they have 5 or 6 going already. And so you can see they picked up the pace and were able to move quicker, which was great that things were moving quickly, and they were working their way towards Robinson Street. So here we are on February 11th, and we know what's going on there. That big cold spell came through, and it did impact a little bit of the progress on these due to the weather. But they were still able to keep going in some instances. I have pictures of guys on lifts while it's snowing, working on connections at the top. And as you can see here, the first few that were done, they started to put the first finish primer onto the canopy, so they started to turn white. And then here we are 2 weeks ago. These were the last 2 canopies installed. These are the 2 westernmost canopies. They're on the north side of the street, and they flank the entrance to the New Omni Hotel. What you're looking at in this picture is cables that have been installed on the top of the canopies. These cables hold up the clear membrane roof, which is an ETFE roof membrane. And to keep the membrane from sagging when it's rain or snow on top, these cables are tightened to a tension, and they actually work through the membrane and help hold it in place. And so here's a picture from the underside. This one has the membrane installed, and you can slightly see that there's little seams or lines where each of the canopies cables go through. Those are actually welded seams of the membrane around each cable. And then you also see this conduit that's not finished in this picture. It comes and ties here at the top of the trunk. This is for drainage. So at there's 3 corners of the hexagon where it's going to collect water, run down this conduit, and then go down through the trunk into the street system. And then another view, looking up, you can see how the canopies get close to overlapping based off of their height, and the membrane roof coming through. You can see how sunlight comes through and allows daylight and protection underneath. And then this is the very first canopy that went in towards the west end. It is now receiving the wood louvers installed, which is another layer added to the canopies. This is the same wood finished material that is on the underside of the soffits and the walls of the convention center, so it ties in with the building. And this one has some of the louvers installed. I think today there's quite a few more of them that have all of their louvers already installed. And so here we are standing in the north meeting rooms of the convention center, and this would be the view you can see when you look out of the north windows, and you can see all the canopies running down the street. And then here's another view as you walk down the corridor on that north side of our building. And then standing on the north side where our big plaza space is outside of the exhibit hall, looking up into the canopies, and you can get another view of what the louvers start to look like under each one of these things. So just a quick little look ahead. They are wrapping up the ETFE roof membrane this week, so those should be complete. Then we're working on installing the rest of the wood louvers. I think those will be done in a week or two. And then that's just working on connections for the gutters and internal downspout. That's going to continue. They're starting to do the last coats of paint on the eastern canopies, and again, we'll be working their way to the west. So the finished coats of paint will be done. And then lighting will be done towards the very end. There's lights that shine up to illuminate the underside of the canopies, and there's also lights that shine down to create illumination along the street. The goal is to have these done, and we're on track to be done end of April. Any questions?
Questions for Kevin? Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I want to add, Mr. Chairman, remember
Yes.
one of the questions that was asked at the subcommittee is if these are unique, and they are not off the shelf. These structures are one of a kind, so they're unique to Oklahoma City.
Well, that was a great question. Who asked that?
I believe the chairman of that subcommittee asked that question.
Well, it is giving us a very unique look, and I'm very proud of the job that these guys have done on it. And we've got something to really be proud of, and I hope I really appreciated all of you guys participating in that in the ribbon cutting. It was a good day, and many good days to come with that. Thank you, Kevin, for you and your team and all you've done for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, then. Let's move to item D.
Item D is recommend approval of change order number 36, project M3-C003, MAPS 3 Convention Center, 100 Mick Cornett Drive, increase of $50,589, Ward 7. So as we get the facility open, we run across some things that were either forgotten or the operator decides that they need, and we're trying to accommodate all these things. So you see that it's a hodgepodge of items, not real substantial amounts in the grand scheme of things, but exhaust fan, speed control, a modification on the shades, a modification on signage, a floor scrubber, power, chair cart revisions, an electric heater, a revision of the parking lot striping, just those kind of issues out there. We would consider all of these routine construction finish-up items, and we recommend approval, and this comes with approval from the subcommittee.
Questions? All right, then. Shall we approve it? Been moved by Bob Nayland and seconded by Dee Morales that we approve as presented. Please cast your vote.
Mr. Stone, do you see your vote?
I do not, but I will vote yes.
Okay. Mr.
This
Dover?
is Mike. Aye.
Thank you.
The item passed. Thank you for your approval. That takes us to item E on the agenda.
Item E is recommend approval of change order number 4 and amendment number 5, projects M3-C010, WC0979, DC0303, WC0970, PC0728, MAPS 3, South Robinson Avenue, reconstruction and resurfacing, waterline replacement and storm sewer relief main, South Robinson Avenue between the Oklahoma City Boulevard and I-40, an increase of $43,968. Trying to wrap that up, if you've been in the area, you know that the roundabout is open to traffic. Yesterday or the day, I think it was the day before. Still some work ongoing on the sides, but we've got it back open to traffic. It looks great. It's functioning well. I was by there this morning and somebody's already done donuts around the circle. So apparently the public's enjoying it too. So there's some some cleanup items here as we go along. Temporary access road, when we were extending 7th Street down to the east on the south side of the Convention Center parking lot, we cut off the driveway to Brassfield and Gorey's compound there, and they were the contractor who's doing the Omni. So we had to build a road that came out a different way and got them access. There was a water line repair. There were some landscape modifications, and this is part of the amendment. The biggest piece of this was some additional sidewalks and crosswalks of about $20,000. Once we got out there, we realized that we didn't include sidewalks on the south side of 7th. Since that's all getting redone, we felt like it was a good idea to put sidewalks on the south side of there. So that's the biggest piece of this. This will finish up April 15th. Very happy with the way it's going. This comes to you from the with the recommendation from both the Parks Subcommittee and the Convention Center Subcommittee.
Questions on item E?
Yeah, Tom, I've got just a quick question of David. Item number 2 on the change order, the water line repair. Is repairing the water line something really a MAPS issue, or did we cause the leak during the construction? It seemed to me that'd be a water trust thing to deal with.
That's exactly it, is that it wouldn't have leaked had we not dug it up, dug around it, disturbed it. If it was a major blowout, we might have looked at condition and talked to Aqua about it, but we felt like it was our responsibility to fix what we dug up and disturbed.
Okay, well, it's a small item, but I was just curious, what had caused that. Thank you.
Other questions for David? Shall we approve it? It's been moved by Kimberly Lowe and seconded by Todd Stone that we approve the item. Please cast your vote.
Mr. Dover, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
The item passed and has been approved. That takes us to item F. David?
Item F, continuing on with the Robinson Avenue. So it's recommend approval of amendment number 1 to engineering services contract with Smith Roberts Baldwin LLC, project M3CO10, maps 3 South Robinson Avenue, construction South Robinson Avenue between Oklahoma City Boulevard and I-40, an increase of $149,160, wards 6 and 7. So we hired, or the city hired Smith Roberts to do the design of the roundabout and the street, and that turned into a water line replacement because the water line under the street was 100 years old and didn't want to build a new street on top of an old water line. Public Works wanted to extend that storm sewer in that area. There's 2 91-inch, 92-inch storm sewers. And then we needed to extend 7th Street. Smith Roberts went ahead and did all this so that we didn't lose any time, didn't delay the project. But coming back now with what we think is a reasonable request to reimburse them for additional work that was done. I want to add that some of this will be reimbursed by various departments. So there's about $50,883 of this amendment that will be reimbursed through Aqua and Public Works Department. So we negotiated this with them, and we feel like this is reasonable and necessary, and it comes to you with approvals from the subcommittees.
Questions for David? All right. Bob Nalen has moved that we approve it. It's been seconded by Kimberly Lowe. Further discussion? Cast your vote.
Mr. Dover, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
The item has been passed and approved. Thank you. That brings us then to, is it item G, David?
Yes, sir. Item G is recommend approval of change order number 2, projects M3-P016, WC 1000, SC 1073, Maps 3 Lower Scissortail Park, generally bounded by I-40, South Robinson Avenue, Southwest 15th Street, and South Harvey Avenues, 10th Street, Southwest 10th Street, and South Walker Avenue, a decrease of $17,382.11. So, continuing with lessons learned from the Upper Park, trying to value engineer some things. Colored concrete, we received a credit of $58,100. So the color was a whitish concrete that really didn't make a lot of difference in the Upper Park because of the Oklahoma dirt. It quickly turned and really didn't think it was any kind of a value for us. So we asked for a credit on that, so we'll just be getting plain concrete. And then there was some water line relocations, some 6-inch and some 10-inch, some water lines that weren't in the as-built places as they dug those up and needed to be relocated. So as I said, this is a decrease or a credit of $17,382. Those there with the Park Subcommittee recommend this.
David, we actually wound up with a quorum, didn't we?
That's right, we did. Yeah, you're right. We did after we got started. So yes, this comes with the approval of the Park Subcommittee.
Okay, money coming back. Any other questions for David? All right, shall we approve it? Todd Stone has moved that we approve it. It's been seconded by Kimberly Lowe. Is there further discussion? Cast your vote.
Mr. Dover, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. It was passed and approved. That brings us to item H. David?
Item H is recommend approval of final plans and specifications, project M3-H005, Maps 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center number 4, 13660 Southwestern Avenue, Ward 5. So this is the 4th wellness center that we've been looking forward to presenting. Ryan Eshelman from GSB is here to do a presentation.
Welcome, Ryan.
Great to be with you all. Thank you very much. Excited to be at this point in the process with final plans ready to bid the project. As you recall, our site on Southwestern near Southwest 138th is presently occupied with just some single-family residences, which will be removed to make room for our project, and includes not only western frontage, but a small portion of an existing pond comes into our site as well and becomes an amenity. The site will be developed with parking fronting western, the building you see there in white, and then a future small park will wrap the perimeter of the park in kind of a dumbbell fashion, with about an acre of land to the north and an acre and a half to the south. And the parking area is sized to serve not only the building, but also users of the future park as well. The area highlighted in dark green is the extent of the work that our project will be undertaking. And of course, as with other MAPS Wellness Center projects, we have a largely curbless parking lot design with sidewalks between the noses of cars to avoid walking behind vehicles, avoiding trip hazards, and substantially more accessible parking than the city ordinance requires. There'll be 2 driveway access points with signage, and then the main entrance obviously facing western. Behind the building, as a part of an alternate, we have an extended terrace area with an outdoor fitness lawn with artificial turf, a bocce court, and a fully accessible raised bed garden, as well as some seating areas overlooking the future park and the pond. If that alternate is not taken, we'll still have some covered porch area with seating as well to take advantage of those views. The building itself is oriented north-south, so north is to the right in this image, and you can see the green areas represent the fitness activities, orange areas kind of multi-purpose gathering space, classroom space, The yellow is common circulation, and then there's a series of administrative and support spaces as well. On the north end of the building, there's a large multi-purpose room, subdivisible for large group activities, multimedia, a classroom-sized space, an art room, and a game room, as well as the main great room, which we'll see an image of shortly, for gathering, congregating, lounging, visiting. And off of that space, a small library where individuals can gather or small groups could meet in a more casual setting. You can see in purple administrative areas, as well as 2 fitness studios, one dedicated to aerobics, dance, Pilates, yoga. The other, a flex studio, will be set up for spin bikes, but it's also a flex room that can be used for meetings, classes, other activities that were not fitness related specifically. On the south end of the building is a large fitness center with all of the requisite fitness equipment, treadmills, cardio, weight machines, a full gymnasium with a basketball court, and accommodate 3 pickleball courts. We were joking that the basketball goals may not be down much, but as popular as pickleball is, we expect the pickleball courts to be humming throughout the day. And of course, the typical hybrid fitness pool with opportunity for lap swimming, as well as fitness water aerobics classes and leisure swimming as well. And as we've learned from past projects, we have oversized the locker rooms up front. So we have substantially more shower and locker room space to support the heavy usage of the pool that we're seeing in other facilities, and we anticipate here as well. The upper level of the fitness area, the gym and fitness area, includes a elevated walking track with elevator and stair access. This is an 11 lap to the mile, 3-lane track, and it will look out over the park and the pond, which I'll show momentarily in one of our subsequent images. This is a view elevated above Western, looking at the west side of the facility. So this is the exposure to the street. Because we're facing the Oklahoma Western sun, we've limited the amount of windows and glazing on this side of the building and protected what we do have with some shade. So the pool has some glazing, some offices. We've got a shading on the front drop-off area, and the forms vary in height depending on the usage within. The back side of the building on the east that faces the park and the pond has a lot more glass, a lot more opportunities for daylight and exposure. There'll certainly be some direct sunlight in the morning, but during the bulk of the day, it'll be wonderful indirect east light coming in with views out. You can see the fitness area here on the left with the treadmills and cardio equipment up against the glass. Up above, you'll see a band of windows with translucent panels above into our track area, which will let light down into that 2-story space as well. And then here in the center, you can see the brightly lit 2-story great room space that looks out under this covered area to the terrace that I mentioned before. That great room that I just mentioned is the primary receiving space once you come into the main entrance, which is just off the screen to the right. Be casual seating area with a fireplace and access to outdoors. The private library that I mentioned is just through this opening on the left side of the image, and down this corridor is access to all of the fitness activities. The fitness area itself is a 2-story space, as I mentioned, with an elevated track, views out to the future park and pond, lots of fitness equipment and suitable maneuvering space for folks of all ability levels to utilize this area. Convenient access to the locker rooms and the elevated vantage point this image is taken from. If you were to turn 180 degrees, you'd be looking down into the gymnasium and pickleball space, which has a similar feel as well. Our public art project for this facility, that process is underway. I was just on a call earlier today with some of the preliminary finalists for that competitive art selection process, and the art installation that's being contemplated is a suspended element in this fitness area. So we're looking at a real dramatic installation that may hang from the structure in this fitness area. Really excited about how that dynamic will enliven the space and allow people that use the facility every day to engage with a significant piece of public art. And of course, the last component I mentioned was the hybrid fitness pool, which offers all of the activities that the other facilities have found to be so popular. Our project budget, as you're familiar with, includes money for not only the building and the furnishings, but the land, soft costs, contingency during construction, and the public art process that I mentioned. So out of that total project budget, we have a little over $12 million with which to build and furnish the project. And our most recent cost information indicates that the project is just within that limitation, including the building and the furnishings listed. In order to achieve that budget compliance, we've included a number of alternates to the project. These give us the flexibility on bid day to add to the project scope as the bids allow, and it also gives us flexibility during the project as construction contingency money is freed up to potentially add some items to the project later in the process, as was done on previous wellness center projects. So you can see these include operable partitions, motorized rolling shades, some of the additional enhancements to the outdoor space, enhancements to some of the interior finishings, acoustic treatments, some laundry equipment, some AV equipment, additional exterior lighting, and an enhanced fitness equipment package. So all of those alternates will give us the flexibility that we need to advance the project and maximize what we can incorporate into Center 4. Our schedule, at this point, we've reached an important milestone in completing the final plans. So pending your recommendation and council's approval, we'll have the opportunity to move forward in April with bidding the project with the intent to begin construction at the beginning of the summer, going through the fall of 2022. That's a quick tour through the project and where we are, and I certainly welcome any questions that you all have about Center 4.
Questions for Ryan?
This is Mike, everyone. Ryan, you just outdone yourself. This is such a cool project, and although some folks that I've talked to over the years never thought we'd get to Fourth Wellness Center, I'm glad we're here, and I want to thank you for all your hard work. It's a very, very impressive job. And I would move the motion unless there are other concerns.
It is very beautiful.
Thank you all.
All right, it's been moved. I have showing that it's been moved by Michael Dover. Is there a second?
Well, I thought we were going to get a fourth project.
Yes, Michael Adams has seconded the motion. Is there further discussion? I want to just add this too, to supplement what Mike said too. Mike and Cecilia and the subcommittee and all of you who have worked so hard, this is one of those things that somebody hadn't planned for us in advance, all of these senior wellness centers. And it took us a while to get moving on them. And it is, you guys have done a fabulous job of staying the course. And we're ending up with something that we already know has been well received by the public, and the ones we already have are just magnificent, and these plans look great, and it's another great day for MAPS 3, and I really compliment you guys on the good job you've done. Any other comments? All right, Stan.
Tom, may I add to your comment? Yes. Before I was appointed to the advisory board, I served with Mike on the wellness subcommittee, and I remember those first few meetings that we had. We were staring off into space. How in the world do we go about designing these wellness centers, and where in the world do we place them? I mean, it's a whole cloth project. Just to use imagination and creativity and science and engineering, and it's phenomenal how we have come to this point. And Mike really deserves a lot of credit for shepherding this through and being an advocate for the wellness centers. And I think we can all be very proud of the four that we have, and looking forward to a fifth. And maps for us. So Mike's to be congratulated, as his whole committee is.
Yes, anyone else? All right, then we have the motion and the second. You may cast your vote.
Mr. Dover, how do you vote?
Aye.
It has been passed and approved. Congratulations. Really appreciate all the good work on that. That then brings us to item I. David?
Item I is recommend ratification and approval of addendum numbers 1, 2, and 3, project M3-R009C, maps 3 Oklahoma River Sports Water Filtration Systems improvements, 800 River Sport Drive, and reject bids, Ward 7. So we put out a project for additional filtration out there, and it came in about $500,000, maybe a little more than that, over budget. We need to reject these bids, and then we're going to go back and do some redesign and see if we can't bring this back within budget like we always try to do. Discussion at the River Subcommittee wanted us to reject these, so unfortunately that's where we're going to have to go with it.
Questions for David? Shall we approve it? It's been moved by D. Morales that we approve it, seconded by Bob Nayland. Further discussion? Cast your vote.
Mr. Dover, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
It has been passed and approved. That takes us to item J. David?
Item J is recommend approval of engineering services contract with Kimley Horn and Associates Incorporated, project M3-W005, maps 3 sidewalks, phase 5, $82,500, wards 1, 7, and 8. So as we finished the sidewalks projects, we had little amounts of money left over in each of those. We've put that all together, and we think that we can build about 2.5 to 3 more miles of sidewalks. So we put out a notice and gone through the usual procedure through Public Works. There were 2 members of the Trails and Sidewalks Subcommittee involved in the interviews, as well as a staff member within MAPS. 3 firms were interviewed in the usual procedure that I think all of you have been involved in through the years, and Kimley Horn is being recommended for the contract.
Questions for David? Shall we approve it? Bob Nayland's moved we approve it. It's been seconded by Kimberly Lowe. Is there further discussion? Your vote.
Mr. Dover, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, that completes all the...
Hold on, Mr. Adams? Oh, there you are. Thank you.
That item has been passed and approved. Thank you. That completes the items under Roman numeral 3. We'll move to Roman numeral 4. Any new business?
No, sir.
Hearing none, then let's move to item 5. We have any member of the board want to provide a subcommittee report? All right, then that takes us to item 6, David's update.
A few things to add. I appreciate and I hope everyone enjoyed the ribbon cutting for the convention center. So it is fully functional and underway, and I think increases every week. We talked about Robinson, and I mentioned that the roundabout is open and should be completely finished real soon. You'll see the pedestrian lights are on there at 5th Street. West River Trail is under construction and continues. If it'll stop raining, they can get that finished, but we're trying to get that finished for the 1st of May to get that trail back open. Lower Park is under construction and have some rain issues there also, but it is well under construction. Upper Park, we replaced those trees on the boulevard that you approved a few weeks back, so you might go by there and see those. Those were damaged in the ice storm. Wellness Center 2 is well under construction. The structural steel is up. It's been framed. They're almost enclosed on the addition part, and the inside has been demoed, and they're doing the plumbing changes, and it's well underway. And Wellness Center 3 is just getting off the ground with the contractor moving on and doing the things he needs to do. Wellness Center 1 is out for bids. Those to be received next week, I believe. Work at the river continues. It's looking good out there and should be complete in the next few weeks. I think we've talked about everything else. I think that covers it.
All right, any questions for David? All right then, that takes us to item 7. Any comments by members of the board?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have our regular Scissortail Park infomercial ready.
Great.
Just want to remind everybody, especially now that the weather is really getting beautiful, there's never been a better time to start visiting Scissortail Park again. The OSU OKC Farmers Market kicks off again on Saturdays, starting April 3rd from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the North Plaza. If you come out to the park right now, you can see the over 100,000 daffodils that were planted across Scissortail Park, which is just an amazing and beautiful sight that won't be there for long with spring coming in. And then also a reminder that the night market at Scissortail Park returns starting on Friday, April 16th. And certainly Scissortail Park is always free for everyone to come and visit, but membership is a great consideration. There's lots of different levels with great benefits, and certainly it's a good place to volunteer and get involved.
Kimberly, I was in a meeting this week where there was a presentation made trying to obtain sponsors for what looks to be a very robust summer of concerts in the park, and I understand that they have obtained a presenting sponsor for that, and that looks like it's going to make a very fun summer with concerts that are free to the public out there all summer long. So another great use for the park.
Oh, I agree, and I know the staff during 2020 was just beside themselves because, you know, they were so excited after our initial concert and kickoff to really be able to program a year in the park that would have been spectacular. With COVID, you know, changing those plans. Everybody's really geared up for this year, and we're very excited about the opportunities that lie ahead for all of our city.
Thank you. Okay, any comments? Yes.
Tom, may I add to Kimberly's? It seems like every one of these meetings I'm commenting to you that we took our granddaughters to Scissortail Park, which we did last week. Again, a phenomenal experience. The daffodils were out. We certainly noticed them, and our granddaughters had a great time. The only problem was social distance was difficult. The park was so crowded. All the people are out enjoying. It was a pretty day. It was cool in the 60s, but it was a gorgeous day, and people are really using the park, and it's wonderful to see.
I think it's become one of our greatest mental health facilities.
It was for us.
It's wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing, Bob. I appreciate that.
Bob, I never get tired of hearing granddaughter stories, so that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. Okay, any staff members have any items for us? I'll then ask staff whether or not we've been notified that we have citizens who want to speak to the Citizens Advisory Board. Any citizens? No, we have not been requested to be heard, any citizens to be heard. And with that completes our agenda for today. Shall we adjourn? Hearing no objection, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much for coming today. Really appreciate your continued faithfulness to this project. Have a great week.
Thanks,
you,
everybody. See you next time around.